Ever get the feeling your favorite sports league is, well, rigged? I'm not talking about a bad call from a ref. I mean rigged by the very rules of the game. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the hidden economics of pro sports and tackle a billion-dollar question. Is it better to have a dominant dynasty or a league where any team truly has a shot?
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at a really weird idea, the problem with winning too much. Then, we're going to put on our detective hats and see how you can actually measure fairness. After that, we'll peek inside the league's toolbox to see how they try to even things out. We'll check the report card to see if any of it's working. And finally, we'll get to the big one. What do we, the fans, actually want?
So, let's jump right in with a concept that sounds, well, completely backwards. What if your favorite team winning all the time was actually a bad thing? Not just for the league, but for your own team's bottom line. You know what keeps us all glued to the screen, right? It's that feeling that anything could happen. Sports economists have a fancy term for it, uncertainty of outcome, but it's just that magic of a last-second shot or a shocking upset. If you take that away, sports just become a script. And honestly, who wants to watch that?
For a perfect case study, just look at maybe the most dominant team in sports history, the New York Yankees of the 1950s. I mean, these guys were an absolute juggernaut. Winning was just what they did. You'd think the stadium would be packed to the rafters every single night, right? Well, not exactly.
Get this. During that incredible, historic run of success, their own home attendance didn't just stall out, it actually dropped by a whopping 31%. That's kind of crazy, isn't it?
So the lesson here is pretty stark. When winning becomes a sure thing, when it's totally predictable, fans just lose interest. And when fans lose interest, leagues lose money. It really is as simple as that.
Okay, so this brings up a really cool question. How in the world do you measure something as kind of fuzzy and emotional as fairness in a sports league? Can you actually put a number on it?
Well, economists have this tool they usually use for wealth inequality, called the Gini coefficient. Think of it like a pizza. A Gini score of 0 means everyone gets an equal slice. A score of 1 means one person gets the entire pizza. Pretty straightforward, right?
And here's the genius part. For sports, you just swap out one thing for another. Instead of tracking the distribution of dollars, we're going to track the distribution of championships. Who's hoarding all the wealth, the trophies?
This visual, the Lorenz curve, makes it super clear. That straight line, that's perfect equality, where every team gets its fair share of titles over time. The curved line, well, that's reality. And the bigger that gap between the two lines gets, the more you know that a few teams are just hoarding all the hardware.
So now, we have a tool. We can actually use this to line up the major US pro leagues and see which one has the biggest gap between the haves and the have-nots. And wow, the results are pretty eye-opening. The NBA is by far the least equal. Its championships are super concentrated among just a handful of teams. The NHL is next, but then you see the NFL, MLS, and MLB, they're all way more balanced. All right, so we've got our diagnosis. Some leagues are way more lopsided than others. So what's the cure? Let's open up the league's toolbox and see what they use to try and create more parity. Okay, tool number 1 is the salary cap, and it comes in 2 basic flavors. First, you've got the hard cap, which is what the NFL and NHL use. Think of it as a strict, non-negotiable budget. Every team spends the same amount, period. Then you have the soft cap, used by the NBA, MLS, and MLS. This one has loopholes. Wealthy teams can spend over the limit, they just have to pay a penalty or a luxury tax to do it.
Next up is the player draft. Now, the original idea was simple. Let the worst teams pick the best new players to help them get better. But that created a whole new problem called tanking. Teams realized it might actually be better to lose on purpose to get that higher pick. So, to fight that, the leagues invented the draft lottery.
And the NBA's recent reform is a perfect example of this in action. They changed the odds so the 3 worst teams now have the exact same 14% chance at that number 1 pick. Before, the absolute worst team had a much bigger advantage. So what does this do? It gets rid of a lot of the incentive for that ugly race to the bottom.
Okay, so leagues have all these rules. Salary caps, draft lotteries, the whole shebang. But here's the million-dollar question. Do any of them actually work? Let's grade the leagues and find out.
This visual just tells the whole story. What you're looking at is how well a team's record one year predicts their record the next. On the left is the NBA. It's almost a straight line. Good teams stay good, bad teams stay bad. It's predictable. But then look at the NFL on the right.
It's just a chaotic mess of dots. And that's the whole point. That is any given Sunday in a picture.
And if we look at another metric that measures how spread out the wins are, the story's exactly the same. A lower number means more balance. And look at that, MLS comes out on top as the most balanced league. And way down at the bottom, yep, the NBA again, the least balanced of the bunch.
So after all the charts and numbers, we're left with this huge, fundamental question that gets right to the heart of why we even watch sports in the first place. Seriously, think about it. What do you really want to watch? Do you want to see your team build an unbelievable multi-year dynasty that people talk about forever? Or would you rather have a league where every single season you honestly believe anybody has a shot? There's no wrong answer, but they are two very different things.
This is exactly why a story like Moneyball is so powerful, right? It was the ultimate David versus Goliath story. You had this small market team, the Oakland A's, using nothing but data to compete with the big money giants. And for a little while, it seemed like brains could actually beat deep pockets.
But, of course, that advantage didn't last. What happened? The rich teams just said, oh, analytics, that's a great idea. And then they just bought better analytics departments and better players. The gap just opened right back up.
So it all comes down to this big question that every league has to answer. Do you engineer the rules for maximum fairness, for parity? Or do you let the free market run wild and allow for the creation of legends and dynasties? The path they choose really defines the sport that you end up watching every week. It's a fascinating trade-off, isn't it?